this opportunity because it's a very rare one and a very good one. So starting off with that, today we are here to talk about Uchcharana. So Uchcharana is pronunciation. Sanskritam is a very precise language in which small changes can lead to great changes in meaning. Changes in pronunciation can lead to big changes in meaning. And that aside, there are higher reasons why we need to make sure, especially with Sanskritam, that we stay razor sharp when it comes to pronouncing the letters. And we'll talk about that. So first of all, this will be somewhat interactive. What do we call letters in Sanskritam? Aksharas, right? And why are they called aksharas? Correct. So ksharati means to be destroyed, to fall away. So naksharati, that which does not get destroyed, is an akshara, right? I mean, this definition does not really hold up under scrutiny, right? If we say a letter, that sound has a birthday and a death day. It starts and ends at a point. If we consider it to be just a language, languages come and go. There are several languages that have been spoken before us. There are several that will be spoken after us. So akshara does not hold up to its definition in the way that we understand it. So let's go to the next slide. So this is kind of just a big picture of why these letters came around and why we call them aksharas. So first there was nirguna brahma, right? So the formless, attribute-less entity that we call God, deity, right? So when he became the world, when he became the jagat, that qualityless, attribute-less entity had to undergo some changes. So this world is made up of two things, nama rupaatmakam jagat. So it's made up of name and form. So an integral part of both of these is sound. So what Rigveda tells us is ajo naksham dadhara prathivim tastambha mantrebhis satyaihi. So with his infallible mantras, with his infallible sounds, that Brahman created and upheld this entire universe. So when Brahman had to do that, he took the form of Shabda Brahma. So Brahman in the form of sound. And whenever Brahman takes form, that form is always, it's specified. So to create, he takes the form of Brahma. To preserve, he takes the form of Vishnu, etc. So when he had to take the form of Shabda Brahma to carry out the necessary functions of sound, he took 50 very special forms that are called the matrikas. Matrikas. So 50 matrikas. These 50 matrikas are what formed the universe. So the mantrebhis satyaihi, the mantras that he used to support this entire universe, those 50 matrikas are the sounds that combined to form and sustain this entire cosmos and the rules, the laws that run it. So these 50 matrikas are what we now call aksharas. So that's where these letters come from that we now speak in. Now, because that Brahma, that original Brahman, right? So not matrikas, not Shabda Brahman, but the original Brahma, that was qualityless, nirguna, that Brahma is changeless and is imperishable and unchangeable. So in Sanskrita we have one nyaya. So if one object is made out of another object, the creating entity's qualities are assumed by the product. Do you follow? So if you make a shirt out of, let's say, wool, the shirt will have the same properties that wool has, right? If you make a pot out of mud, the pot has the same properties that mud has. In the same way, because these letters were made out of Brahman, they are as permanent, as immutable, as unchangeable as Brahman is. And these matrikas, also, there is one more important thing here, which is why we need to be very, very careful when speaking Sanskritam. If we see there, right? Shabda Brahma Swarupeyam Shabdatitam tu Japyate. So when that Brahma, when we need to do japam of that Brahma, so you take a mantra and you do japam of that form of Brahman. So Ganapati, Ganapati mantra, Durga, Durga mantra, etc. the only letters you can use in mantras are matrika varnas. So A to Ksha. Those are the only letters that you will find in mantras because they are matrikas. So matrikas are not just letters that we use to transact in speech, but these are the letters that make up divine forms. So Devatas have a Taijasika Sharira, so like for Vishnu we have 4 hands, a blue body. They have a Tantra form. So for let's say Devi, so Shri Chakra is Devi's form. In the same way, mantras too are forms of deities. So if you take a Ganapati mantra, that mantra itself is Ganapati's form. So when Brahman wishes to express itself through sound, it takes the form of these 50 matrikas. So now all of a sudden, the care that we need to take in pronouncing each one of these letters has skyrocketed immensely. And that's why there are several sounds that we have that we don't have in Sanskrit. So like the fa sound that we have in Hindi, the za, like the z in English. There are several sounds that we don't have in Sanskrit, not because the language can't interpret them, but because they're not these matrikas. And because Sanskritam uses these matrikas, we say it is Deva Bhasha. So that's where the name Deva Bhasha, Girvarna Bhasha, Divya Bhasha, that's where that comes from. Okay? So these are the letters that we need to learn. And just as, one more tidbit there I guess, so just as we hold that this world is made up of Shiva and Shakti, right? So Chaitanya, Purusha and Prakriti. In the same way too, these 50 matrikas, right? We have 16 vowels and the rest are consonants. So Kala Mandala Makyatam Shabdarupam Maheshwari. So all the vowels from A through Aha, right? A, I, U, U, all of those are said to be Mata's form, Devi's form. And then all the consonants, so Ka through Ksha are said to be Shiva's form. And why they split that up that way, we will see later. Let's go forward. And this is actually where we started the presentation from last year. But it's a really nice shlokam that kind of sums up what I just said. So, amantram aksharam nasti, nasti moolam anaushadam, ayogyaf purusho nasti, yojakas tatra durlabha. So there is no akshara that is not a mantra, because of what I just said. Everything is a mantraka, that is a form of Brahman. And then it also says there is no root that does not have medicinal properties. And in the same way, there is no individual who is useless. So everyone has a place in the circle of life. Everyone has a place in this world. The only thing is, yojakas tatra durlabha. It's hard to find someone who knows what that purpose is, but everyone has their purpose that they're meant to fulfill. Either way, the point here is that amantra aksharam nasti. Every letter is a mantra. So then, they've split up the Vedas into several portions, and there are several important things to keep in mind when chanting the Vedas. So we'll start from there. So all knowledge that we have in Sanatana Dharma must originate from the Vedas. The language used in the Vedas is called Chandas. And to preserve the Vedas, there are 6 Vedangas that the Rishis gave us. Does anyone know their names? Okay. So, Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Jyotishya, Chandas. So these are the 6 Shastras, these are the 6 sciences that you need to know in order to have a good control over the meaning of the Vedas and to be able to apply the Vedas. So our Shastras tell us that these Vedangas have 3 purposes. Swarupataha, Arthataschaiva, Anushthanathite Tridha. So Swarupa. So first, making sure that the Vedas are preserved as is verbatim. Then Arthataha, to make sure that the Vedas are being interpreted in the way that the Rishis meant them to be. Not that anyone wrote them, but that they are being interpreted in their actual meanings. And then Anushthanath, to make sure that we're carrying out the duties that the Vedas gave us. So, 2 Vedangas are allotted to each prayojana. So, Shiksha Chandastu, Shiksha Chandas Swarupetu. So, Shiksha and Chandas. Shiksha is pronunciation, that's what we'll be talking about today. Chandas is meter. So these 2 are the Vedangas that help us in making sure that the Veda is being preserved accurately. Then Niruktir Vyakritis Tatha Arthataha. So Nirukti is the meaning it's the Vedic dictionary more or less. And Vyakarana is grammar, so how a word carries a meaning and how a word gets that meaning. So these two help us in making sure that the meanings of the Vedas are being preserved accurately. And then Jyotishya and Kalpa. Kalpa tells us the way to perform yajnas, and Jyotishya tells us how to calculate time using astronomy. So these two help us in Anushtana, so being able to carry out the Vedic karmas that have been prescribed to us. So today though, we'll be studying Shiksha, which is pronunciation, and that's why that was the Vedanga that was authored, to make sure that the Veda is being preserved exactly. Let's go forward. So then obviously, you've probably heard several people read shlokas and pronounce letters in several ways. So then the question comes up, so what then becomes the meter stick for us to get an accurate pronunciation? So, once upon a time, there were 1,131 Veda Shakhas. So, Rigveda had about 13, Samaveda had about 1,000, Yajurveda had 101, and Atharvana Veda had either 8 or 9. Check my math on that, but roughly this is how much it was. And each Shakha, right, so each branch of the Vedas had its own Pradishakya rules. So each Veda has its own way that they pronounce these things, right? In Yajurveda we say Granana, Antva, Ganapatigam. Yeah. So then in Rigveda it changes with Granana, Antva, Ganapatigam. So the pronunciation changes there again. Actually, even without even further, the first line of Rigveda, right? Agnimire Purohitam. There is Agnimire Purohitam, Agnimire Purohitam, Agnimire Purohitam. So already we have three different ways that I know, and I haven't even studied that Veda. So you can imagine the number of variations that there were, in these Vedic shakas. So Vedas are different. So that you need to learn via parampara. But because Sanskritam was derived from the Vedic language, people kind of touched their own shakas pronunciations onto it. But we have more or less, via Panditas, we have more or less consolidated it into one correct method of pronunciation, and we'll look at that today. So then the origin of these letters, right? So we know, I gave you the whole lecture in the beginning about how Parabrahma took the forms of the mantrakas and all that. But there's another charming story. So, does anyone know the name of the Rishi that wrote Vyakarana? Very good. One of the youngest people knows the answer. Very nice. So Panini Maharshi is the author, is the Rishi that gave us Vyakarana, grammar. He wrote Ashtadhyayi, which is a treatise of aphorisms on grammar. So he was doing tapas, because anything that Rishis give us is not born out of just human capability. Like Uncle said, it's Daivadatta. It's earned. It's not just written. It's earned through tapas. So Panini was doing tapas, and Parameshwara gave him darshana, and he gave him darshana as he was doing Tandava. So Nrittavasane Nataraja Rajaha Nanadadhakkam Navapanchavaram. So he made his Damaru sound 14 times. Uddhartu Kamat Sanakadi Siddhan. So and he hit his Damaru with the view to uplift mankind, and how we'll see. So in order to uplift mankind, he hit his Damaru 14 times, and so 14 sounds then came out of his Damaru. So these 14 lines are called Shiva Sutras, and they are placed in the beginning of Vyakarana Shastra. I will say them, and I request you all to repeat it after me, because there are certain mantric properties associated with it, and it's very good to say. Ayun, Rilik, Eong, Ayouch, Hayavarat, Lan, Yamagananam, Jabhai, Ghadadhash, Jabagadadhash, Khapa Chata Chakatav, Kapai, Shashasar, Hal. So, have you ever heard a drum that sounds like this? Because I have not. So, either way, Parameshwara hit his drum 14 times, and these are the 14 sounds that they made. And these contain all the 15 sounds in the Sanskrit language. First of all, this order itself is genius. If we ever get a chance to talk about grammar, we'll talk about that, but Pratyahara, which was developed from this, is absolute genius, and that's why I think we can see this is not man-made, this is born out of tapas. But that's a subject for another day. Let's go forward.
Are you going to share the slides?
Yes. If
I'm going to post this in
some marketing. So we're running a blog called Akshara Sadhana. So myself and my Sanskrit class, so Lasya is in it, and a couple of other college kids are in it. We post about Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, certain Sanskrit topics that we think would be helpful both for us to learn and for others to learn from. We will post it there. There are helpful videos and stuff, so definitely go check it out, subscribe, and give us feedback. So after that commercial, we will now go back to our scheduled program. So Shiksha, like I said, is the Shastra that helps us talk about pronunciation. We find its roots in the Taittiriya Upanishad, where it says Shiksham Akya Syamaha Varnasvaraha Matrabalam Samasantanaha Ityukta Shikshadhyayaha. So these six portions are what are important when we are pronouncing a letter, right? So first we have Varna. So first of all, we need to make sure we're saying the right letter. We're not saying Ka instead of Ga, we're not saying Pa instead of Pa. So Varna is first. Then Swara. This is kind of more Vedic. Because in Veda, it's not just the letters pronunciation we need to worry about, it's the Swara. So the level that we're pronouncing it at. There's a Chartu Shloka. Mantro hina swarato varnato va mithya prayukto yajamanam mithya prayukto natamarthamaha mithya prayukto natamarthamaha savagvajro yajamanam hinasti yathendra shatru swarato paravata. So once upon a time, this rishi called Tvashta was doing the yajna because he wanted to have a son that would conquer Indra. So what he said was, he said Indra Shatrur Vardhasva, which means may Indra's destroyer grow. Now, if he said this in Sanskritam, this would not have mattered because the meaning is clear through this. The problem is though in the Vedas, the Swara too conveys meaning. If you say Ajaha, it means Brahma. If you say Aja, it means Maya. If you say Ajaha, it means a goat. So the meaning is conveyed through the Swara itself. So what he did was, he said he put the Swara on the Tru instead of a previous letter. So in Sanskrit, Indra Shatru can mean two things. It can mean he who is a destroyer of Indra, or he for whom Indra is a destroyer. So he intended it as in may Indra's destroyer grow. But he put the Swara in the wrong place and it got the meaning may he for whom the destroyer is Indra grow. So Vritra grew and Indra destroyed him. So that's why it says Savagvajro Yajamanam Himasti. So especially in Vedas, this is kind of off the topic, but it's very important. In Vedas, pronunciation is 1000% very important because it will lead to counter effects. Anyway, so
you're all lucky that you're not having any swaras in this Bhagavad Gita. You're only worrying about the Varna. Okay, so there's no swara in the...
And that's why we do Upanayana after 5 years old, because that's when the child is able to pronounce everything properly, so there will be no ill effects to chanting Vedas. Yes?
So how do you know which of those 1131 pronunciations is the right one?
You follow your shaka. Always Mahadato Hiranitata Savantha. You follow your... So if you're Apastama Sutra Taittiriya Shaka, you follow that. If you're Hiranyakeshiya Shaka, you follow that. If you're Madhyantana Shaka, you follow that. So always you go in the path that our forefathers have led the us. So always, in matters like this, go by your Vamsha Achara. Vamsha Achara is what you go by when learning Veda and things like that, or whatever your Guru tells you. Okay, so after Swara, then we don't really have to worry about that for Bhagavad Gita. Then we have Matra, duration, right? So if you say Rama, right, that means Rama, Kodandaparni, Sitapati, Rama. If you make the Ra Ahrasa, if you make it short and make the Mala, if you say Rama, that doesn't become Rama, but rather his wife, Lakshmi. So Matra is also important, then balam. So, if you say khara instead of kara, kara means hand, khara means donkey. So, be very careful where you put the Mahaprana and where you put an Alpaprana. Then Sama. You want to make sure that you're reading evenly and not, it's not, in India we say cut. I don't know if that's proper English, but I'm using that. Then Santana is making sure that you're putting the right letters together in the proper way. So, especially in Bhagavad Gita, right, you get mana adhatsva, right? So you cannot put the ta after the sa or the va before the ta. Everything needs to come in the proper order. So, Santana. These 6 things we need to keep in mind. This next part, don't look at the board, listen to me. The board is for me to know what I'm telling. This is drawn from Kaumudi. So I actually look at the board here. So this is drawn from Kaumudi, so this is a grammatical text. In the beginning, while talking about the Shiva Sutras, it talks about how to pronounce the letters first of all. Okay? So this is kind of what I'm basing the pronunciation key off. So the first thing it talks about is the matras. So we have 3 classifications. We have Hrasva, 1 matra, Dirgha is 2 matras, Pluta is 3 or 3 plus. So 1 matra is roughly the time it takes to blink your eyes once. Not at high speed, not at slow speed, normal speed. So, Ushcha, Ushcha, Ushcha. This is how Shastra talks, we have to understand it. So, U is 1 matra, U is Dirgha, 2 matras, U is 3 matras, Kluta. And then, it talks about the swaras, Uchcherudataha, Nicherudataha, Samahara, Swaritaha. So, the swara that goes up is Udatta, swara that goes down is Anudatta, and the swara that goes up twice is Swarita. That you don't have to worry about here. Then, from after that, it talks about where these sounds are coming from. This is really a beautiful thing because for us, the Shastras are just as much religion as they are science. I don't know if any other culture has analyzed speech as much as our rishis have. If you look at Paniniya Shiksha or Vyasa Shiksha, it goes into much more detail about where this sound is coming from, right? They split the speech up into 4 parts. There's extensive elaboration on that. Those who are interested can look into that. So, Mukha, Nasika, Vachanaha, Anunasika. So that which you use your nose to pronounce is Anunasika. So there are Anunasika letters that are separate, but every letter can also be pronounced in an Anunasika way. So I can speak like this, and I can also speak like this. So second is an Anunasika, if you use your nose, right? So thus far, those of you who are good at math, right? So let's say we take the letter A. So how many lengths are there for us to pronounce it in? 5? 3, right? Hrasva, Dirgha, Pluta. Then how many swaras are there? 3, right? Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita. Then you can either pronounce it as an Anunasika or as not, without an Anunasika, right? So there are 2 things there. So overall, how many ways can you say the letter A? 18, right? So yeah, it's very varied. So A, I, U, and R all have 18 ways to be pronounced. Then R, we don't really use that much, but that does not have a dirgha, so therefore there are only 12 ways to pronounce that. Then in the same way, A, I, Au, these do not have dirghas, so those fall away. In the same way, so like I said, they have also done calculations to show us how many letters can be pronounced in how many ways. So, let's go forward. Next. Tulyasya prayatnam savarnam. So, from here on, they're telling us the Varnamala. So the Varnamala is the list of letters from A to Ksha. Actually, incidentally, so in Sharadamba's hand, right, she has a Jabamala that is called an Akshamala. So actually, as per Sanskritam, it should be an Akshimala. It is an Akshamala and not an Akshimala because that Akshamala contains the letters from A to Ksha. That mala is the embodiment of the 50 letters. So because it goes from A to Ksha, it is called an Akshamala. Anyway, if I say Akshamala, it's referring to all the letters henceforth. So this talks about where those letters are being pronounced from. So it says, Talvadisthana. So Talu is the roof of the mouth. So from such places, sound is coming forth. So Akuha Visarjaniyanam Kantha. So for the letter A, and Ku means Kavarga, Kakha, Gagha, and also Unga to some extent. So these are, for these Ha, the letter Ha, and Visarjaniya. Visarjaniya is Visarga, right? So the two dots that we put at the end. So these are all pronounced from the throat. So when you go home, if you say Ka, Kha, Ga, Kha, you'll see that most of the prana vayu is coming from the throat. Then, Ichu Yashanam Talu. So for E, Chu is going up Chavarga, right? Cha, Cha, Ja, Ja. So for E, Chavarga, Ya, and Sha. These are all coming from the Talu. So Talu is the front part of the mouth. So not the roof, not the teeth, but that region in between is Talu. Then R to Rashanam Murtha. R. So we'll talk a lot about this one because this is it's a troublemaker. So R to Tatha Dadhana, and then Sha, Ra, Rebha, Sha. The Sha that fits the top of your mouth. These all are coming from Murdha. So Murdha is coming from the roof of the mouth, all of these. Then R to Lasanam Dantaha. So R, Tatha, Dadhana, and Sa. So all of these are coming from the teeth. So these are all, we call it Anubhavika Vidya, right? So as you say these while looking at this, you will see this a bit more clearly. Then Upadhvani, Upadhvaniyanam Oshtham. So U, Pabha, Bhama, and this special sound called Upadhvaniya. We'll talk about that as well. All of these are coming from the lips. So we say, right, like, you know, in every language pretty much, the first thing the child says is the letter for mother, right? Amma, Ma, mother, mom, right? All of these are Oshthas, Oshthya letters. Then Nyamagananam Nasika Cha. So if you remember, all of these are the fifth letters, right? So in Ka, Kha, Ga, Gha, Unga, so that Unga. Cha, Cha, Ja, Ja, Nya, that Nya. So for all of these fifth letters, it contains the Kantha and also Nasika. So Cha, Cha, Ja, Ja, Nya. So that has the Talu and also Nasika. So thus for all the fifth letters. Then Eight Aitoho Kantha. So you might have noticed that A and I were missing from that previous list. That's because they come from two places, both Kantha and Talu. So the throat and the front of the mouth. Then Odautoho Kanthostham. So O and O, that comes from the throat and the lips. O comes from the lips. Then Vakarasya Dantostham. So Va comes from the teeth and the lips. Then Jihvamuli is Jihvamulam. Jihvamuliya comes from the root of the tongue. Then Nasika Anuswarasya. So the Anuswara, the sound, or the Unga, the sound, more or less, comes from the nose, the top of the mouth. So I'll send all of these out. You can review these, but for now, just I'll introduce you to them. Shalo So Shashasa are all called Ushma letters. Then Ach. So Ach, if you remember the Shiva Sutras, Ayun Rilrik Ayong Ay Ouch. Right? So it ended in Cha. So from that first A to Cha, these are all called Swaras. So Swaras are the vowels. These Swayam Rajate are Swaras. So they do not need to be, they do not need the help of other letters to be pronounced. They can be pronounced on their own. And if you remember, that's why they said that the vowels were Amba and the consonants were Shiva, right? Because Shiva by himself is Jada. When you add Amba, he becomes alive, right? Because Amba is Chaitanya. So that's why the rest of the letters are called Vyanjana. Vyanjana means that which is mixed in. You cannot say Ka, Kha, Ga, Gha without adding an A or an E or an U at the end. So just as Shiva does not get Chaitanya without Shakti, these consonants they cannot be used without these vowels. So even that's the poetry that our people have put into even naming these things. So then, ka, kha, ite, ka, bhyam. Okay, so this part is really important. These are the things that we need to talk about a bit more today. So when a visarga comes before a ka or a kha, it makes a special sound called a jihva muliya. So if you, okay, give me an example from Bhagavad Gita of visarga coming before ka. Okay. Yogasthaha kuru karmani sandantyatva dhananjaya. Right? So you have yogasthaha, you have a visarga at the end. Then you have a ku, so you have a ka coming after. So you need to say yogastha kuru karmani. You need to expel a little bit more air. It's a kind of a harsh sound. Or tataha khalu, you say tataha khalu. I think khalu yatatmavan. Tatah kuru yatatmavan, right? So again, same thing there. Tatah kuru yatatmavan. So you need to let out some extra air there for ka and ka. Then, when a visarga comes in front of pa and pa, it makes a sound called an upadhvaniya. So, this is the names. We can spend an hour talking about the way we name these. So, an upadhva is a bellow. So, this is metalworking terms. So, when you heat the metal, you push this bag of air down, and it shoots out a thin, concentrated stream of air that cools down the metal. And that metal makes this sound as it cools down the metal. And that's the sound you need to make, so they named it Upadhvaniya. So they put a lot of things into naming these. So Tatah Param, right? Tataha Param, you say the Visarga, you say the Pa, but you need to put in this first sound in between the two. Tatah Param, Tat Parimargatavyam, Matah Parataram Nanyat Kinchadasti Dhananjaya, etc. So also to note, several regional languages have this fa letter as part of their language, like fal, things like that. No such thing exists in Sanskritam at all. There is no fa. Wipe that out of your memory when you do Bhagavad Gita. Absolutely not. This is the only place you'll get the sound fa at all. Everywhere else, palguna, phala, things like that. Only pa, no fa at all. That's kind of something that needs to be hammered in, because a lot of us have some bad habits when it comes to language. Then, am and aha are called anuswara and visarga respectively. So this is a chart that demonstrates the same thing. Though this slides will be on our website, shatavadhani.com. So you can see these there.
Aksharasadhana.com. Okay.
We'll talk about it in the end. Let's get through this first. So this tells you where everything is being pronounced from. So pretty much what I just talked about. In this bottom part where it says VA, the first one means voiced. The second one means aspirated. So in our terms, that means that it's aspirated means Mahaprana. Voiced, it has but they just call them really Varga Prathamakshara and Dvitiyakshara. But the Ka, Kha, Ga, Gha, those letters are called Mahapranas. So that's what the V and A mean. And yeah, that's just a chart that pretty much summarizes up the things I've told you in the last 10 minutes. So then, Anuswara, there are some points where you will see the bindu at the top. You need to pronounce that in a nasally way. So, give me an example of a bindu coming before a va. Before a ya. Manas Sanyamya, right? So when you write it in Sanskritam, when you write Sanyamya, you write Sa, Bindu, Ya, right? So we don't pronounce that as Samyamya, but Sanyamya. Okay, so a bit of a nasal tone has to be there. Manas Sanyamya Manchitta. Then, so we talked about Visarga, we talked about the Upadhvaniya and Jitvamuliya. Then when Visarga comes before Ksha, everywhere else a Visarga is a yellow light, in front of a Ksha it's a red light. You need to stop and then go. So Sukhinaha Kshatriya Partha, not Sukhinaha Kshatriya Partha, Sukhinaha Kshatriya Partha, Tejaha Kshama Bhadishaucham, etc. So Sukha Kshami, etc. Okay, so that is Visarga for now. Then we have something else called Avagraha, right? You'll see it like this. In Telugu it's written like a 2, but in Sanskrit it's written this way. That means that a sandhi has occurred, and in the process of that sandhi happening, an akara has been dropped, right? So there where it says kopi on the board, that means kaha api, right? So in the process of the sandhi, the visarga becomes an u, you drop the a and u become o, so you get kopi. In all reality, there's actually no avagraha in Sanskritam. It's an adopted custom that tells us that a sandhi has happened. So, custom tells us that just wait like an extra, not 1 matra, but wait a quarter matra there so that listeners know that a sandhi has occurred. This is not, a Rajashasana, this is no order, but it's nice for people to know that a sandhi has occurred there. So, rather than saying kopi, say kopi. Or you can say kopi, as you please. Then there are some other letters. We have la, which we'll talk about. We have kra. A lot of people pronounce kra in several different ways, but kra is k with the sha, that's the murdhanya. So those two put together. The sha that's written like this, sha and shanmukha, it's those two put together. So you need to, S, they have these English terms for it too, S dot, S line. So it's an S dot in your books. So it's that ksha. Then you have tra. Tra is not a letter on its own. It's ta and ra put together. Same thing with nya. It's not an own letter. It's the panchamaksha. So the nya put together with the ja. Okay. And then we have la. So there is no script for la in Sanskritam. But we cannot say with any guarantee that there is no la letter in Sanskritam. So I've asked several panditas on this, and I asked people in Sringeri too. What they said was, la is a letter that has come to us through both Vaidika Parampara and Laukika Parampara. So you can use it, but la is definitely not wrong. La, some people might say you are wrong, so you do as you please based on this information. So you can say Kalidasa. Kalidasa, no one will question you on it, but you can say Kalidasa. Up to you. Okay. So thus far you've gotten a sense, right, of how to pronounce these letters. So we have a saying in Paniniya Shiksha, Vyagri yatha hare putran daushtrabhyam nacha pidayet bhita patana tadvad varnan prayojayet. So the kids will know this if you watch like National Geographic or Animal Planet, right? If you see a tiger cub carrying, a tiger mother carrying the cubs, right? So those fangs are the same fangs that it uses to kill its prey. But when it carries its cubs, the cubs come out unharmed, right? So it holds the cubs gently enough so they don't fall, but it also does not hold them so tightly or that they get hurt, right? So that very delicate, with that much delicate care, it carries them. In the same way, we need to make sure that we're very delicate in the way that we pronounce our letters, making sure that it neither goes this way or that way. So delicate and firm. Visarga, we pretty much covered this. So keep these in mind. Then, when a word has a visarga and it's followed by sa, sha, or sha, does anyone remember what those three letters are called? Ushma, very good. So sha, sha, sa are called ushma. So if it's followed by an ushma, you drop the visarga and the following ushma gets duplicated, right? So tataha shankhashcha, tatash shankhashcha vednashcha, right? Tataha siddhimavapsyasi, tatas siddhimavapsyasi, etc. I'll tell you why I'm telling you about these sandhis, because this becomes important later on. Skip this. Then there are some special cases. So in a lot of places where ha is a samyukta akshara is one or more hals, one or more consonants. You can pronounce the ha either first or second. You must write it first, but you can say Brahma or Brahma. You can say Vanhi or Vahni. You can say Chinha or Chehna. So you have both applicable. Madhyanham or Madhyahman, both Anvikam, Ahvikam. We talked about La and La. Then, when you get an Anuswara and a consonant, right? So an Anuswara we said was the Bindu that you see on top of the line. Nowadays, in the name of Sarala Bhasha, people are just writing it with the Bindu, but tradition and propriety dictates that you don't write the Bindu, but if it's a Varga Akshara, so Kakha Gaghanya, Jaja Jajanya, if it's one of these letters, you need to substitute the bindu with the fifth letter of that line. So if you're doing tatha, if you're doing kamtha, you don't write a ka, a bindu, and a tha. You write a ka, a half, tatha, right? So you write a half na, and then the ta. So kantha, right? Da, ta, danta. You pronounce it as a na, not as a ma. So make sure that you're doing that when you read them. So Shankara, Anjana, Brahmanda, you can see the examples there. Then another common word that comes a lot in Bhagavad Gita is dukkha. So in regional languages, when we speak really quickly, we tend to say dukkham, dukkhamu, I don't know what it is in other languages, dukkhan, dukkharu, dukkhagalu, I don't know what it is. But you need to pronounce the visarga before the ka. Dukkha. Not dukkha, but dukkha. This comes so many times in Bhagavad Gita, so I figured I might as well say it, because if you don't pronounce dukkha, you'll have a lot of dukkha in correcting it. So, keep that in mind. Then, okay, I am testing your memory today, but we're talking about shiksha, right? So pronunciation. What was the other Vedanga that went with shiksha? Do you remember? Chandas, correct. So Chandas has this. Chandas has this construct called Guru and Laghu. So Chandas is meter. Gurus are heavy letters. Laghus are lighter letters. So Gurus are pronounced with a bit more force and a bit more stress. So Dirgha Aksharas. So Dirghas and A, I, O, Au, Aha. All of these letters are Dirghas. All other letters are Hrasvas. Even if, with one exception, if a Hrasva is followed by a Samyukta Akshara, so one or more hals, that Hrasva then becomes a Guru. Do you follow? Right? So if I say, let's say Patra, right? So Pa on its own is a Hrasva, it's a short letter. But because it's followed by Tra, which is a Samyukta Akshara, Pa then becomes a Guru. This is a very delicate balance to hit, and it's one that some people miss and some people get. It kind of depends on how you've been saying it. So, tell me if you can tell the difference between these. Patra and Patra. It's a fine difference, but you need to pronounce the Pa as a Guru. So, it's not Patra, it's Patra. Okay? So, we can talk about that more. Yeah, so like Chakra, right? So if Cha by itself is a Hrasva, it's followed by Kra, which is a Samyukta Akshara. So Chakra, not Chakra, but Chakra. So there needs to be a stress on the letter that becomes a Guru. Chandas is very important, not just in Vedas, but in Laukika, in worldly Sanskritam too. They say, Api Masham Mashan Kurdiya Chando Bhanganna Karaye. So the word Masha is
It's used for making bhajis.
Vada. That's the vada flour. I don't know what it's called in English. But that is called Masha. So once so once a poet was, writing poetry needs to be in Chandas, right? And he had to put in the word Masha. Okay, so Masha is a Guru and a Laghu, right? But he couldn't fit it in because the Chandas needed two Laghus. And this Masha is a Guru and a Laghu. So he went to his teacher, he said, I cannot I can't fit this word in, what should I do? He said, Api masham kurya. Make the word itself into masha, but don't mess up the chandas. So he said, change the word if need be, but don't mess up the chandas. Because in chandas, the rhythm itself has certain properties that we need to preserve. So that's why this Guru Laghu Bheda is very important, and Uncle and I will be enforcing that in audience and all that. Okay, so there are people who are chanting and there are also readers, right? How many people here are readers? Raise your hands. Okay.
Against them.
That's because everyone else is memorizing. So these things will go for readers and also for anyone else that's reading. So in Shiksha, in Paniniya Shiksha, in that Shastra, after he talks about how to pronounce the letters, he talks about how to read. If you're reading, if you're pronouncing it, you can pronounce things accurately, but there's also a method of reading that you need to hold to for quality. So first he tells us how not to do it. So Giti, Shikri Shirah Kampi, Tatha Likhita Pathakaha, Anarthagyaha Alpakanthascha, Shadete Pathakadana. So this was meant both for Veda and Laukika. I will tell you the Laukika applications. So first Giti. There is a time and place to sing shlokas. If you want to be Ghantasala and take 100 shlokas and make a cassette to sing Bhagavad Gita, all well and good. Not during Parayana. Parayana, you're reading the shlokas in the laya, in the tone that is set by the organizers. Then Shikri. Some people, whenever they chant anything, they always have a bus to catch 15 minutes from the time they sit down. So don't go that fast. Tell at a normal pace. Especially for the younger kids, I was the same way. I was always on a sugar high. You go really fast, it needs to be slowed down willfully, purposefully. Then Shirah Kampi. Some people always have a fly in their ear when they chant. Don't move your head when you chant, keep your head still. People saying names, I have nothing to do with this. Then Likhita Pathakaha. So this is actually more for Veda. You're not supposed to read off a copy. You're not supposed to read a written copy. So if you want to interpret that for Bhagavad Gita and become memorizers, those of you who are readers, all well and good. But my duty, I'm telling you that this was meant for Veda. Then Anarthagyaha. This was not meant for Veda, but meant for normal stuff. Because to learn Veda, to learn the meaning for Veda, that's a long process. But when you chant, you should have some idea of the Arthaspraha, right? So in Venkateshwara Suprabhatam, Sapre Mabhiti Kamala Karapallavabhyam Sambhahanepi Sapadiklamamamadadhano. So in the first line, right? Sapre Mabhiti Kamala Karapallavabhyam. If you read it as Sapre Mabhiti Kamala Karapallavabhyam, see, you have not stopped in the middle. But now it sounds like the word is Kamalakara. Kamalakara is a lake. Right? That doesn't make any sense. You need to read it as Sapre Vabhiti Kamala Karapallavabhyam. It then becomes Kamala, who is Lakshmi's Karapallava. So by Lakshmi's lotus-like, bud-like hands, his feet are being pressed. So, you're not saying it wrong. You're saying the right letters. But when you say it, the meaning needs to be somewhat, evident to the listener. So I'll say it again. Sapre Mabhi. This is the correct pronunciation. Kamala means Lakshmi. Okay. Kamala Kara means a pond. Kamala Akara. Okay. This is the correct pronunciation. Sapre Mabhi Kamala Karapallavabhyam. Okay. Then as opposed to Sapre Mabhi Kamala Karapallavabhyam. Do you hear the difference? It's like where you. It's very simple to correct. If you intend the meaning to be Kamala, you will say it that way. If you don't know and you think the word is Kamala, you'll say it that way. It's actually pretty straightforward. So as long as you know what the words are, you can base it off of that. Like Venkat Uncle said, I too want to spend some time afterwards sitting with you and doing meaning for Bhagavad Gita. So as per Ishwarecha, that can maybe
an example for the previous say Telugu. Just give one example. Nanna Naku Nyayam. Nanna Nyayam Cheyatledu. Nanna Nyayam Chestunaru. Ante my dad is doing justice to me. Nanna Nyayam Chestunaru. Nanna Nyayam Chestunaru. It's the same. The way it is written is same. నాన్న అన్యాయం చేస్తున్నారు, నాన్న న్యాయం చేస్తున్నారు. But it's written same way, నాన్న అన్యాయం. So my dad is doing justice to me, my dad is doing injustice to me. But it's exactly written the same way. But
yeah, so either way, keep the meaning in mind, and we'll do our best to help with that as we can. Question?
So is it the way you group the words?
Yeah, it's the way you group the words, and also, especially when there are avagrahas, right? The thing is, in avagrahas, usually you miss an a, okay? And when a is added in Sanskritam, it means the opposite meaning. So if you pronounce a lot of the times, so let's say you have Mahan, or let's say you have Mahanubhava, right? So Mahanubhava means a great person, right? And then Amahanubhava would mean someone who is not a great person. So let's say you're saying like Ramaha Mahanubhavaha, right? Ramo Mahanubhavaha. Right? So far so good. Rama is a good person. Now let's say you say Ramo Mahanubhavaha and you make it avagraha. That means you're saying Ramaha Amahanubhavaha. You read the letters Rama and Ramo Mahanu. You're reading the same letters, but the way you break it, the way you group it will change the meaning.
so I will explain when any shlokam comes, that needs to be exactly. So I will explain that.
Right? And then Alpakantha. Some people have a volume problem, so that volume needs to be on high. You chant. You should not be Telugu Gurukkodu. I don't know what the exact word that carries that connotation in English is. Mumbling doesn't carry the connotation of Gurukkodu, but okay, murmuring. Don't murmur it. No, say it strongly. You have good teachers, and no one's going to find fault with you. We're all here to learn. So be strong when you speak. So letters are meant to be said, strongly out loud. Generally the way we work is, if something should only come through parampara, we don't say it out loud. So like mantras, things like this, we do, silently. But for these kinds of Laukika texts, we are told to chant it out loud. When we do Parayana, you can do Parayana silently, but Parayana is better when said out loud. Because in Sanskritam, I told you, right, these letters are not just letters. They're divine. And so that, this is actually a property that we can apply to several other things. Mantras and Vedam require a lot of rules to be followed, a lot of restrictions for us to follow. They're not feasible for the everyday person to follow. So what our rishis did was, because the language carries this, this mahatma, this greatness, they gave us the same effect of reading those mantras into, worldly language. So that's the whole point of stotras. So for those, for that power to take place, that sound needs to come out loudly. So that's why it needs to be read out loud. That's the long answer to your question. Okay? And then I'll be very quick with the next one. It's pretty much just the opposite of the first. So madhuryam aksharam viktihi adachchedastu suswaraha dhairyam layasamarthancha shadete pathaka guna. Madhuryam. So, try to be sweet when you're saying it. Not saying you have to sing it, but make sure that it's a pleasing tone. Then aksharam vyaktihi. It should be clear whether you're saying ka or ga. Don't go in no man's land. Ka, ga, not ka. So make sure that every letter is being clear. Then padachchedaha, we talked about this. Make sure words are being broken up where they are. Again, we will help with that as fit. Then suswaraha, again this is for Vedam, we don't really have to worry about that. Dhairyam, be bold about chanting, right? Same thing, be forthcoming, be outright. Then layasamartham, things need to follow a certain pattern, both for two reasons. One, for chandas to be maintained, and second, because this is not an individual reading, this is a samuhika parayana, right? How many people were on the stage last year? 250 people. So if there are 250 people and every person has their own pace, the stage cannot handle 250 paces. So everyone needs to be in the same pace from start to finish. So these are the things that you need to keep in mind when you're reading the shloka. Next, we talked about most of these, but tha, dha differences. It's ratha, samartha, athaitadapya shaktosi. Particularly Telugu people, and I guess other people too, we have a tendency to kind of say the two in the same way, but be very clear about where thas are and where thas are. Then ra, some people roll them, like it's not karma, normal karma will suffice. Then amrita, then when you have the vowel r, right? So this is why I showed you where these letters come from, so that you can know for yourself the difference between the r and ra, right? There's a difference between the vowel and the consonant. So it's amrita, not amruta. Some people pronounce it like a ru or a ri, right? It's its own thing. It's not amrita, it's not amruta, it's amrita. Then the sha, sa. This is the mahabhutam that all of us have to overcome when reading this, but this needs to be hammered in very, very, very hard, because everyone has their own Ishtadevata way of saying it. Sha, and sa. So because it's a mic, it becomes maybe a bit more clear, but it should be that clear when you're pronouncing it too. If you have doubts, this worked for me. This is what my Vedam teacher told me. Put on, you don't have to read or say anything, but put on a cassette of people reading this, either Gita or you have recordings available, right? You send out recordings? Yeah. So listen to the recording with the mindset of listening for that letter. Like, don't listen to it to look at the shloka. Listen to it while looking for that letter, and it'll help you. Have someone listen to you while you say it and then repeat it. That helps too. I'll be honest, it took me a good 2 months to change the way I said it back in, I think it was 5th grade when I started Vedam. But yeah, make sure that that gets corrected ASAP for those of you that have problems. Then Visarga Kavihi, the Visarga takes up 1 matra, not more than that, not less than that. Then Halantas. So North Indian languages generally tend to cut off the vowel at the end of the letter. South Indian languages generally tend to add on a bit more after the word is over. So don't add on, and also make sure that you pronounce the letter at the end. It's not Rama, but it's Rama, Krishna, Partha, right? So make sure that you're saying the whole thing. Then Nya. Nya is also another thing. Telugu people know, right? N.T. Ramarao, all the dialogues he told in movies, he could not say Nya. He said Natavasa when he was doing Nartanashala. So, I don't know why he said that, I just wanted to say that. So, make sure it's Nya. It's not Gna, it's not Nya, but it's Nya. It's the Ja and the 5th letter of Cha, Cha, Ja, Ja, Nya. Okay, so it's those two put together. Yajna, Jnana, yeah, you'll get Jnana a lot, Kshetra, Kshetra, Jna, Jnani. So this is another frequent flyer in Bhagavad Gita. So make sure you take care of that. Then Na and Na, it's marked in the book, so you don't have to worry about it, but also make sure that, you know, some things are Na, some things are Nas, they need to be pronounced as accordingly. Okay, and that's it. Any questions?
How's this in Akshara Sadhana?
Yeah. Okay, marketing time. Last year we'll now talk to you about Akshara Sadhana. Okay, wait, a few questions. Yeah.